All right, so today we are going deep diving into the Kennedy assassination.
Okay.
And you have given us a really interesting mix of sources here.
Yeah.
We've got fair play newsletters,
Hmm.
we've got an ARB deposition transcript, a police officer's memoir, and even some concert reviews.
It really does speak to just how much this event continues to fascinate people.
Right.
Even decades later.
Yeah.
There are still so many people trying to piece together this puzzle.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting about the sources that you've given us is that you're really interested in the alternative perspectives.
Yeah.
You really want to challenge the Warren Report.
Absolutely. And, you've got sources like the Fair Play newsletters
Right.
that are really digging deep and suggesting that there might have been a conspiracy within the U.S. government.
Okay, so let's set the stage here a little bit. It's 1963.
Mm-hmm.
Cold War tensions are running high. JFK is really pushing for this thaw with the Soviets and even Cuba and Fair Play saying this is what got him killed.
That's their argument.
Yeah.
They're saying that certain factions within the U.S. national security apparatus saw Kennedy as a threat, someone who was jeopardizing their power and their interests. So they orchestrated the assassination to maintain the status quo.
That's a pretty bold claim. What evidence are they using to back that up?
Well, one of their key points is the manipulation and suppression of evidence.
Okay.
They use the Zapruder film as an example and argue that different versions were released with keyframes altered or censored to fit the lone gunman narrative.
So it's like they're saying the truth is hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, like it's disguised by these subtle edits.
It's like a real-life conspiracy thriller.
Right.
Are there any other examples of evidence tampering?
Oh, yeah. They also point to the destruction of critical evidence, specifically the original autopsy notes by Commander James J. Humes. I mean, why destroy potentially crucial information unless you're trying to cover something up?
That does raise some eyebrows. And then, of course, there's the magic bullet theory.
Ah, yes. The bullet that's supposedly zigzagged through both JFK and Governor Connally, defying the laws of physics, according to a lot of critics. Yeah. And Fair Play really contends that these inconsistencies surrounding this theory, the bullet trajectory, the number of shots fired, it points to something bigger, something more complex than just a lone gunman.
So they're basically saying the official narrative is full of holes. Who do they blame?
They point fingers at some pretty major players, the Warren Commission, the FBI, and even media outlets like Life magazine, claiming they were complicit in pushing this false narrative.
That's a pretty scathing indictment.
They even go so far as to criticize the Assassination Records Review Board, the ARB, saying they ultimately failed in their mission to uncover the truth.
If their analysis is accurate, it paints a pretty dark picture of how truth can be manipulated and buried, even in a supposedly democratic society.
It raises the question, though, if the official story is so airtight, why go to such lengths to control the narrative?
Right.
Why the secrecy?
Yeah.
The destroyed evidence? The pressure on witnesses to stay silent?
It seems like Fair Play is really building a strong case for a conspiracy here. They're not just throwing out wild theories, they're pointing to specific inconsistencies and potential cover-ups. But their whole argument seems to rest on Lee Harvey Oswald being a patsy.
Exactly, to buy into their theory. You have to believe Oswald was either framed or deliberately set up to take the fall.
Right.
So the next logical step is to examine Oswald himself. Was he really capable of pulling this off, or was he, as Fair Play suggests, a pawn in a much larger game?
Now that's where it gets really interesting. Because even without the conspiracy theories, Oswald's a fascinating character.
He had a complex background, defection to the Soviet Union, alleged communist leanings, ties to various political groups.
It's almost like he was a walking, talking Cold War paradox. Yeah. And that makes him the perfect scapegoat.
Right, a former Marine with ties to the enemy. It fits so neatly into that Cold War narrative of good versus evil.
It definitely feeds into the paranoia and suspicion of that era. But before we get too deep into Oswald, let's shift gears for a moment and look at those ARRB deposition transcripts you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Specifically the ones from John Stringer and Floyd Reeby, the autopsy photographers.
Right, because their testimonies raise some serious concerns about the authenticity of some of the autopsy photographs.
Wait, are you saying the photographs might have been tampered with?
Well, Stringer, the primary photographer, expressed uncertainty about some of the images, particularly those of the back of JFK's head He even went so far as to say that he believed the brain photographs might not even be of Kennedy's brain at all.
That's shocking. Are you serious? If the official autopsy photos are in question, what does that mean for the entire investigation?
Well, it raises the possibility that the visual evidence we've all come to rely on might be unreliable, potentially even manipulated to fit a certain narrative.
So we have these two guys.
And Reeby Stringer's assistant. While he initially agreed with the images, he later expressed doubts as well.
So they were literally in the room taking these photos, and they're not sure what to believe. It's like the more we dig, the murkier the waters become.
And then to add another layer, Reeby claims he took additional photos with a 120 format camera, something Stringer doesn't recall.
It definitely raises questions about why those additional photographs, if they exist, haven't been part of the official record.
Right. Were they intentionally withheld? Or did they just get lost in the chaos of that day?
Either way, it adds another layer of doubt to the official narrative.
And let's not forget Stringer's testimony about being forced to sign that secrecy agreement under the National Security Act. I mean, that speaks volumes about the atmosphere surrounding the entire investigation.
It's like they were trying to control the flow of information from the very beginning.
Exactly.
But if there was nothing to hide, why all the secrecy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It definitely lends credence to Fair Play's argument about a systematic cover-up. It suggests a concerted effort to suppress dissenting voices and maintain a very specific narrative.
So we've got questionable evidence, potential tampering with key photographs, and a culture of secrecy enforced through intimidation tactics. It's starting to sound less like a straightforward investigation and more like a John le Carré novel.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg we haven't even touched upon. The counter-arguments presented by authors like Gerald Posner.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Let's hear what the other side has to say, because if we're going to get to the bottom of this, we need to examine all sides of the story.
Posner's book, Case Closed, takes a completely different approach. He argues that all those inconsistencies, all that so-called evidence of a conspiracy, it's nothing more than misinterpretations fueled by a desire to protect JFK's legacy.
So she's essentially saying that the cover-up wasn't about the assassination itself, but about protecting JFK's image.
Exactly.
That's an interesting take. What kind of information is he talking about?
He suggests that there were details about JFK's personal life, you know, affairs, health issues, things that could tarnish his reputation, things that could tarnish that idealized image America had of him. And according to Posner, the Kennedy family went to great lengths to control the narrative and suppress this potentially damaging information.
It's almost like he's flipping the script here, turning the Kennedys from victims into perpetrators, a different kind of cover-up.
He even goes so far as to say that Robert Kennedy's actions, particularly his efforts to control the investigation and the release of information, inadvertently fueled the conspiracy theories.
That's a bold claim. Is there any evidence to support that?
Well, he points to the fact that Robert Kennedy was very involved in shaping the Warren Commission's report. He wanted to ensure that it presented a clear and concise narrative that would put an end to speculation and protect his brother's legacy.
But wouldn't that be natural for a grieving brother to do? I mean, wanting to protect his brother's memory?
Of course, but Posner argues that those actions, while understandable, had unintended consequences by trying to control the narrative so tightly. Robert Kennedy inadvertently created an atmosphere of suspicion and secrecy that fueled the very conspiracy theories he was trying to quell.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Right.
The more they tried to control the information, the more people started to believe there was something to hide.
Precisely. The classic case of the cover-up is worse than the crime.
Right.
But Posner's arguments haven't gone unchallenged.
Okay.
He's been accused of cherry-picking evidence, ignoring witness testimonies that contradict his theory, and generally pushing an agenda.
Okay, so there are definitely some holes in his narrative as well. What are some of the specific criticisms?
Well, one of the most controversial aspects of Posner's book is his claim that Admiral George Berkeley, JFK's personal physician, removed the president's brain from Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Hold on, are you serious? He's suggesting
that
the president's brain was literally smuggled out of the hospital.
And the problem is, this claim directly contradicts the findings of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which concluded that the brain was never buried with the rest of JFK's remains at Arlington National Cemetery.
So where did it go?
That's a good question.
So we have fair play, arguing for a government conspiracy, Posner pushing the lone gunman theory, and pointing fingers at the Kennedy family, and conflicting accounts about missing evidence, like the president's brain. It's enough to make anyone a conspiracy theorist.
It's a testament to the enduring power of this event, that even after decades of investigations, countless books, documentaries, articles, we're still debating the same fundamental questions. It seems the more we learn, the less we know for sure.
And it makes you realize that history is rarely black and white. It's messy, it's contradictory, and often open to interpretation.
Right.
But wait, before we get too long down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, let's circle back to those other sources you mentioned, the police officer's memoir and the concert review.
You're right. Those seem almost out of place in this collection.
Yeah.
But they offer a different kind of insight into the period.
Okay.
The police officer's memoir, for instance, gives us a firsthand account of the chaos and fear that gripped Dallas in the aftermath of the assassination.
It's a reminder that behind the grand narratives and the political machinations, there were real people whose lives were irrevocably changed by this event. It humanizes the story, bringing it down to a personal level.
Exactly. And his account
Yeah.
of capturing Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
While it adds little to the conspiracy debate, it does provide a sense of immediacy and drama. It's a glimpse into the confusion and uncertainty of those first few hours after the shots rang out.
It's almost like a snapshot of history unfolding in real time. And what about the concert reviews? How do those fit into all of this?
Well, on the surface, they seem completely unrelated, but I think their inclusion is intentional.
Yeah.
They offer a glimpse into the cultural landscape of the early 1960s, reminding us that life went on, even as the nation mourned the loss of its president.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about major events and political figures. It's also about the everyday lives of ordinary people, the music they listened to, the shows they attended, the hopes and dreams they held.
And in a way, those concert reviews serve as a counterpoint to the darkness and tragedy of the assassination. They represent the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to find joy and beauty, even in the face of profound loss.
So after sifting through all these sources, from the hard-hitting conspiracy theories to the personal accounts, and even the seemingly mundane concert reviews, what's the takeaway? Are we get any closer to the truth about JFK's assassination? My head's spinning a bit. It seems like every piece of evidence just leads to more questions.
Right.
Did powerful forces manipulate events? Was Oswald a patsy? What about those missing autopsy photos and that secrecy agreement Stringer had to sign? It's hard to know what to believe.
Yeah, that's the thing about events like this. They become these historical Rorschach tests where everyone kind of sees what they want to see based on their own biases and preconceptions.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the web of conspiracy theories, especially when there's so many unanswered questions.
So how do we navigate this? How do we separate fact from fiction, especially when even the so-called experts seem to disagree?
Well, I think the key is to approach everything with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
Don't take anything at face value, whether it's the official narrative, a conspiracy theory, or even Posner's counter-arguments. Question everything.
So it's not about blindly accepting one side or the other. It's about critically evaluating the evidence for ourselves and forming our own conclusions.
Exactly. Look at the source material. What are their biases? What are their motivations? And most importantly, what evidence do they present to support their claims?
Right.
For example, Fair Play's argument about a national security state cover-up is compelling, but it's crucial to also consider
alternative explanations.
So we need to ask ourselves, could those inconsistencies be the result of human error, the chaos of the situation, or even just a desire to protect JFK's image, as Posner suggests? It's about weighing the evidence, considering different perspectives, and ultimately drawing our own conclusions.
Precisely. And remember, this isn't just an academic exercise. The Kennedy assassination was a pivotal event in American history. It shattered the nation's innocence. It fueled distrust in government. And it continues to shape our political discourse today.
So it's not just about solving a historical puzzle. It's about understanding the forces that shaped our world and continue to influence us today.
And it's a stark reminder of how fragile truth can be, how easily it can be manipulated, distorted, and even buried.
That's a sobering thought. But if there's one thing this deep dive has taught me, it's that history is not static. It's a living, breathing thing that's constantly being reinterpreted and reshaped as new evidence emerges and new perspectives are brought to light.
And that's what makes it so fascinating. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to question.
So even though we may never know the full truth about what happened that day in Dallas, the journey of exploring the evidence, the different arguments, and the lingering mysteries is a valuable one in itself.
Because it forces us to think critically, to challenge assumptions, and to engage with history on a deeper level.
That's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Kennedy assassination, we'll leave you with a final thought. Don't just accept the official narrative or the most popular conspiracy theory. Dig deeper, question everything, and draw your own conclusions.
The truth, as elusive as it may be, is out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered.